the other part is they then became a Peter Thiel.
Yes.
And they've invested in Palantir and so what I'm asking is, bar E, who else is doing that? Because you've got to jump to the other side and say, having been a founder and knowing what it means to be a founder, knowing what it means to raise capital, I'm also going to go to the other side and I'm also going to allocate. And I don't think enough of this is actually happening. I think it's some, but not enough.
I wanted you to help break it down for our audience, again, from a South African perspective. Because I think one of the things we've recognized in living or being in Nigeria now is you see how fragmented Africa really is.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe when I'm in the US, I get more African-centered news versus people in Nigeria won't necessarily know what's happening in South Africa. People in South Africa don't really have the nuances of what's happening in Nigeria. This Elon Musk Starlink thing, because I know it came up with the whole Black Economic program you were talking about. Could you explain to us who are like, we have Starlink in Nigeria.
Yes.
It's here.
Yes.
What is this disparity that it led to farmers in South Africa now living in Mississippi somewhere? What is this whole, because it's like, for those of us who are watching, it's like Minnesota. It's like, what's going on?
Yeah,
it's like, they were making it seem like
they're asking for help. They need asylum. Like, I didn't
making
understand
it seem
what was going on.
like South Africans don't want internet. Like, what is going on? Could you help break down what the nuance there
The
for
major theme here is that, and I'll speak generally now, but the major theme here is that those who benefited from and live in the world of white privilege still see Black progress as a threat.
Yeah.
Unless it's Black progress they endorse or Black progress that doesn't immediately present as a threat.
Yeah.
But they still do. Once you understand that theme, you realize that that whole narrative against South Africa versus, or the narrative that, Ibrahim Traore is a terrorist, it's actually part of the same school of thought. It's that when we determine our own rules, we're doing something wrong. So let me give you the context. By the way, I should say that I respect what Elon has achieved. I deplore his character. I don't like him. Elon Musk is he's a hypocrite. Let's call it what it is. I mean, he has the audacity to tell South Africa that it can't have laws to empower people who are disempowered by law. I should tell you, a law which he was empowered by. His own father, who I debated at Oxford Union, benefited from apartheid by running mines during apartheid, which Black people were not allowed to do. So Elon Musk went to school in a Rolls Royce because his dad was benefiting from the system he says we shouldn't have in place. Who does he think he is? Is the first point I want to make. Second point I want to make. Beginning of this year, I was in a country in the Middle East. I won't mention who they are. This country has incredibly harsh restrictions on Twitter. One of Elon Musk's CEO was in the same room with me. In fact, he was sat 2 people away from me at this particular conference, raising money for Grok AI from that same country. So let me see if I understand this. Here is a country that limits the use of Elon Musk's technology, but he finds nothing wrong with how this country uses technology, and by the way, uses that technology to surveil its citizens and incarcerate them without trial just because he's getting money from them. Elon Musk's God is money. Once you understand that, you don't have a struggle understanding Elon Musk. He isn't led by principle. He's led by his God, which is money. Why am I saying this? First, we have a law in South Africa called Black Economic Empowerment. It's called Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment. It has had several failings. It's not policy. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But it still has demonstrated signs of success. Communities that have been built by minds who are operating in communities where by law they didn't have to build them. Now the law says, if you're operating in that area, you need to do something for the people. You're extracting from their land, do something. These are some of the nuances of this law. So Elon Musk wanted to launch Starlink in South Africa. And and we have an act that governs the telecommunication space, which his technology falls into, which act was very clear. He said, I don't want to give away a percentage of my business. Now, he doesn't have to. We've got multinationals operating in South Africa all the time. Black economic empowerment says if you can't do an ownership to black people, then you can do what is called an ownership equivalent. So take the value of your company that you're going to build here. X percentage of it must be benefiting the indigenous local people. If you can't give that in an ownership, then what you'll do is you'll run programs that equal that amount.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we've got every single multinational in South Africa. We've got McDonald's, Ford, KFC, Chrysler, name them. They're in our country. They do business there. And so he wanted this whole thing about, I just want to come in and operate and I want to write my own rules. The problem with this, and I understood it from the government stage, I should tell you, I'm probably one of the most vociferous critics of our government. So there are very few times when I actually agree with them. But I understood their position, which is we either have the law or we don't. And it's either for everybody or it's for nobody. But we can't create special rules because one person has the ear of a man in the White House. That's not the way that game works. And so I think that they then took that and said, how else can we find a narrative to support this? Then came this farm murder narrative. Okay. If I get impassioned, excuse me. There is no such thing as a white genocide. It doesn't exist. Cut the shit. Okay. Because if it did, the universal world of whiteness would have made sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. Donald Trump himself went and presented to Cyril Ramaphosa images of graves in the Congo. He didn't even make sure he had the right intel when he was broadcasting this to the world. So there's no such thing as this white genocide nonsense. That's the first point I want to make. Once the white genocide narrative failed, they switched the narrative. They said, oh, there's no such thing as a white genocide. There are farm murders. And the farmers are white. And they're being targeted. Okay, let's double click on that. The largest by population segment of people in South Africa who suffer murder are black females. Those are the facts. So if there was going to be a genocide cited by a function of sector population, it would be black females. But let's look at this farm murder issue specifically. Even on the farms, the people who die in farms through murder is the highest number is farm laborers, not the farmers, which laborers are predominantly black. So even if we took this farm murder thing and said, let's examine it, it isn't even that, right? So what the real issue here was a whole confluence of geopolitical issues. It was the Israel question and the posture South Africa's taken on the Israel question. It was this Expropriation Act, which has been introduced now around whether or not South Africa will expropriate land at nil compensation. And then it was Elon Musk wanting to launch Starlink into South Africa and getting pushback. And each of the people who were playing, different sides of this football game kind of came together at the same time. And that's where this narrative came up. It just so happened it was the wealthiest man in the world, and he had the means to flare up this narrative and drive it. Even in South Africa today, I should tell you, there are still people who are not for the Reconciliation Project. So it's not as if you land in South Africa, everybody's for the Reconciliation Project. That's why we, myself included, take very seriously the responsibility we have to actually build a country. Because I don't know, you do know that there is a town in South Africa where if you are not a specific color and a specific cultural group, you can't live there.
Yeah. I saw that on YouTube the other day.
So if there was a white genocide, how could a town only for those people exist? Surely this is where the genocide would start. That's where it would be targeted. Now, I'm not saying it should do. I don't want to be glib here, but I'm simply making the point. I take strong umbrage when people think we're not intelligent enough to see the games they're playing. Like, really, we can actually see the game. It's not really that smart. Let's have a political argument. Let's have an ideological argument. But at least let's have a good faith argument.
And I think that's what I want to double click on, because I have a political science background. We said the debates, government, that's what I studied. And I think I also have the Socratic method of debate and argument. And I used to believe.
Did you hear that? That is where we want to double click on. Oh my Lord. English is growing every day. That's why you must not think that you are smart when it comes to English. Double click on, Baba. That's where I want to. Wow, that was nice.
Which has been discontinued was there used to be good faith arguments.
Yes.
And there was such a thing as intellectual honesty.
Yes.
Right? Which is if I'm debating with you and you make a point that makes me pause. Because I don't want cognitive dissonance, I have to go back to re-examine my beliefs.
Yeah.
But in this game that's being played, especially these are men who Elon is somebody that anyone who's a builder has tremendous respect for, right? But then when you try to reconcile hey, this is a man who's learned how to do hard things and he's taking us to Mars, and nobody can question his
Amen.
ability to build. No one questions that. But you try to reconcile that with, why are you playing these intellectually dishonest games where you could still achieve the same things you want to achieve by even being intellectually honest? So why do you feel the need to? Because I think what happens to, for those of us who watch what's going on globally, is, okay, so you have a platform. You're using this platform to stoke like maybe fake stories or fake news and spread misinformation that benefits you. And you're saying over the long term, from a legacy perspective, what are you really angling for here? Because you're a man who clearly thinks about the eternal.
Exactly.
With what you built. But for some reason, you're not realizing with what you also put out there in terms of information, you are most likely going to end up destroying this side on a longer term horizon. So I think, what are your thoughts around that? And especially when it comes to this whole black narrative and people trying to be acting like we don't see these games. What is it about this stuff that they do that's clearly intellectually dishonest, and they don't want to really have an intellectually honest conversation? What is this game that they're playing?
The lesson for them to learn is this. If you lie to moderates, they become extremes.
Okay.
So quit lying. It's like, you and I are moderate.
Yeah.
That is to say, even though I have a set of views, I can be persuaded.
Yeah.
If you can have an intellectually honest conversation with me, present me with the evidence, I will gladly change my mind. I often do.
Yeah.
My survival depends on my ability to change my mind. So if you lie, and I know you're lying, then I have to assume
It's malicious.
that it's malicious. And that's what turns moderate people into extremists. This is the part of the problem that, in particular, those who play the extremist game on the other side aren't willing to face. That they created the counterweight. I don't know if you saw it, about a day or two ago, Donald Trump was quite upset that China has taken several moves in the geopolitical space.
With the rare metals.
And if you read, so I did this exercise, I took that thing and I posted it on my chat GPT, and I said, write this as if it was Xi Jinping writing it about the US. And what you realize is, what he's accusing China of is what he's been doing. What he didn't anticipate is that the universal law of counterweight and balance, for every push, there must be a pushback. He just didn't anticipate. It's for the first time the US in its history has a party on the other side that actually can fight back. And so the point I make is this: just be careful of lying, because you turn people who are willing to engage with you into people who understand, well, if you're lying about this, then what else are you lying about? And I now have to assume that the extremists on the other end were justified in their extremism because you lied. I have to assume that when they said you're a bad faith actor, they were right the whole time because you're proving it. So this for me is the thing about Elon that I just don't understand. He's at the level of influence where he can shape generations.
Exactly.
And I mean really shape generations. Go to Mars is great.
Yeah.
You know, let's become a multiplanetary species. Fantastic. But he could actually do it now for the people who do exist on this planet. And for whatever reason, he keeps playing for these like marginal, I don't know, man, interests. It genuinely confuses me. I don't get it. I'm not sure what the driver is for him.
Chica had a post where she talked about, true innovation is about making impossible lives possible, right? And obviously,
So good.
great.
White people have been fighting me every day.